It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. And Scout is with us this Feedback Friday, right, Scouty? Because you stabbed Mummy in the foot with your claw because I was ignoring you right before I started, right, bud? Okay, you're happy now. Scout is getting love. Scout is very assertive about getting what he wants. Yeah, he got me right in the middle of the underside of my foot. That hurt, you little bum. Anyway, that's how my cats give feedback. You give feedbacks through comments. And again, there's a lot here. And I'm going to do as much as I can in about a half hour. If I don't get to your comment, I apologize. I could read 2 hours of comments this week and not get done. So it wasn't that there were like a huge number of comments. It's that there were a lot of really great ones. Wellness Wednesday is becoming something that's really important to people. I've had people say they shared those videos with friends, that they've shared those videos with their therapist. It's humbling in a good way. So yeah, I know some people who are doing Patreon just for Wellness Wednesdays, which is very, very interesting because traffic versus what people are willing to pay for. I'm going to stick with what people are willing to pay for. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Interesting stuff. But let's start with the Xbox stuff. It seems like a lot of people said, I don't care about Xbox because I've never owned an Xbox. I care about Sony's practices because I actually own a PlayStation. And there's a logic to that. I guess this just isn't as Xboxy a crowd as some other channels, which I guess makes sense based on the content. Xbox fans don't know from Senran Kagura. So, okay, that's one interesting thing. One person, more than one person, but one person especially is like, oh my god, it sounds like you just want to make a video about the PlayStation says you should just do it. It sounds like you're defending them. And it's like, I've made a video about the Sony PlayStation thing when the Senran Kagura censorship happened. I get that people miss videos, but I'd really appreciate it if people didn't just assume I haven't covered something. It's one of those things that it keeps coming up. I don't know how many ways to say I don't like it, but I understand it. People are like, that's condoning it. It's like, no, it's not. There are a lot of behaviors that people do that I don't like, but I understand. You know, if someone has a mental health issue, do I like when they become symptomatic? No, but I understand it. You know, if someone is an addict, do I like when they fall off the wagon? No, but I understand it. You know, various things like that. There are some coercive forces in gaming right now that you gotta pick how you're gonna fail. And that's the way Sony chose to fail. Again, I don't like it. To me, it's more understandable than Xbox gouging its customers. Unless Xbox is desperate for money. Like I said, that makes sense. I don't think this is the way out of that hole, but I understand it. Another interesting perspective. Podolvico, I hope I'm saying that right. But he, I think it's a he, made the comment basically that Xbox's player base are kids and toy companies gouge parents with kids' toys. Gaming's just doing the same. And I thought that was an interesting perspective and one that, you know, didn't apply to my personal experience back in the days with Atari games and then Sega games. I had to buy my own games with my allowance. And let me tell you, you know, when your allowance is between $2 and $5 a week and a game costs $50, it takes you a long time to get those games. And maybe that's where my personal aversion to price gouging comes from, and I'm a little bit more about these waves of censorship, and maybe that's it. Maybe I've seen waves of censorship come and go. I saw the whole parental advisory labels on albums. Maybe I'm just more zen about that for that reason. It doesn't last. It always buckles. It's always short term, just because it's crap, because people eventually tire of it, and all the "you bad" label on something does is create a curiosity and drives people towards seeking out the product, which is what the parental advisory labels did. In some cases with Sony, entire franchises got canceled or put on hold. That sucks. That ain't good. And I get why people are upset about that. And maybe it's just an emotional response in some people that their favorite franchise got canceled and they're pissed at that. Again, I'm an Alan Wake fan. I'm still waiting. I'm not giving up yet for a proper Alan Wake sequel. I'm not, but it's been a long time. It's hard to keep hope. So, it's interesting that it just seems like it's different audiences. One person, I think it was around Dark Lord, and I'm not reading his whole comment because I'm saving another one of his comments. Basically, he suggested that Sony violated its brand with censorship. And that's true, because one of the reason Blu-ray won the format war with HD DVD is they let porn on Blu-ray. So, I mean, one, I guess it shows how times have kind of changed, but also, yes, it is a brand violation. Whereas Microsoft, people expected Microsoft to be greedy dicks. Or I'll put it, Microsoft are the original big bad greedy dicks of the tech space. Fair point, right? Fair point. Don't violate your brand. That makes sense to me. Viennicus Prime brought up the fact about price increases and the cost of games have not kept up with inflation. It's not just that, though. Yes, that is accurate. The fact that a game, sold for $50 in the 80s, it's only up to, up here in Canada, it's up to 80 now here. And that's not, if you look at the increase in the price of everything else, games have not kept pace. But it's more than that. Because in the 80s, one playthrough of a game was a few hours, and there was just replay value, right? You played it over and over and over and over again. Now it's, and when PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, that era, the average game was like 18 hours long. Then art assets got super stupid expensive. And all of a sudden it was like, well, if you're going to create all those art assets, you have to create like a 60-hour experience. And that's the problem, as well as inflation. Just, they're having to make a lot more game for the same amount of money. And that's one of the reasons I'm a big fan of Ghost of Tsushima. They didn't succumb to that urge that more is better. Like, Tsushima is a 35-hour game-ish, and I'm good with that, because it was a really good 35-hour game, and then they did multiplayer and stuff like that. And if you want to go around and be a completionist and mop stuff up, fine. But you can have a good, meaningful experience in like 30 hours. To me, that's perfect if it's a good experience, right? Per hour dollars are about the same as a movie at that point. And it's quality, and I don't feel exhausted by the time I'm done. So many of these super lengthy games, it's like, 40 hours in, I'm like, I just want to finish it, please. I'm not even enjoying it anymore. I'm just committed to it, which is frustrating. Moving on to the free speech stuff. I thought that went fairly well. People were mostly just cool and respectful and engaged with the concept. So, yay, that makes me happy because that has not always been the case regarding free speech stuff. People get very knee-jerk triggered on the topic. And there were the summary sort of the best comments on this subject were about finding the line, were about theory not really working in practice. And some of these comments are quite long, but I want to read them because they're on the nose. Dwarven Hobble says, on the whole, the problem with the radical free speech side being the vitriol causing people to be silent. The issue there is there's no damn standard. Agreed. Anita and her horde were yelling that people were trying to silence her because, and this was from her UN speech, people telling you you're wrong. She did go on to give other things, but one of the things deemed to be silencing awful lots of abuse to her was to tell her she's wrong about something, but it was fine for her to have called a certain person a garbage human and a shithead on her spot on stage for said person just daring to sit in the audience. I'm assuming Dwarven Hobble's referring to Sargon of Akkad. For the record, I did criticize her for that. I did think that he might have been a dick just sitting there, but he was just sitting there, and that's no call to call someone a garbage human. I think she just got triggered. I've been in those situations where somebody's come to a panel just to try to unnerve me. It's part of the game, man. It's part of the game. You never take the first shot, and it's hard sometimes, but you don't. So I'm just, fair point. I was consistent on that, just for the record, because I agree with you. Also Dwarven Hobble, just for the record, I do not believe that telling someone they're wrong is harassment. That's keeping it to the idea, right? And you're wrong. Here's why you're wrong. I wish more people would actually do that. I find it really infuriating, the internet habit of just bad take or stupid idea. No elaboration, just bad take, stupid. Nothing follows. Nothing follows, no matter how many times you go back that up, or it's meaningless and just rude. Back that up. They don't. Bad take. Friggin' hate that. Now, that's not harassment either. It's just a waste of fucking time, right? But yeah, just for the record, I just want to clarify, because those are good points, right? A lot of the absolute free speech law can take as well as they give, while the side who wants restrictions are more than happy to throw out the abuse the moment you give anything back. It's funny because there are other comments that conflict with that, and they give examples. So it's interesting. So logging that, the people who want people to be more civil, or as Dwarven Hovel calls it, an illusion of civility, they're hypocrites. It's undeniable, right? Like, you don't say, I want people to be civil, and then call someone a garbage human. That's not civil, right? You may totally believe it. It may be totally authentic, but it's uncivil, right? And Dwarven Hobble goes on to say, he's had conversations that started off horribly uncivil, and then things calmed down and they were actually good discussions. I've had similar experiences. I don't think people get 2 rounds with me of being uncivil or outright rude. And if they settle down after that, and I go, great, do it without the swearing and I'll talk to you. If they settle down after that, no big deal. People get triggered. People have things they care a lot about. And some people just have bad days. But there are some people who just want to fling invective. And I think it's reasonable to recognize that does drown stuff out. And the block button isn't enough because, anybody who's watched my Twitch channel watches people 10 minutes, every 10 minutes, the guy is back just being a dickbag, and there's nothing you can do about it because they just take out new screen names. And there's nothing I can do about it. There's something the tech companies could do about it. Like, there is technology that can, check IP addresses, stuff like that. We could cut down on it a lot. A really, really motivated troll, no, they can spoof, right? But for most people, there's things they can do. There's tons of things they can do. They just don't. Because right now it financially benefits them to let this stuff go on, to let the cancel culture go on, to let the knee-jerking go on, to just let the mob rule, because the mob is engagement, right? It's just clicks. Look how many people use our service. Sure, they're using the service to ruin someone's week or month or year. There was a really high-profile story up here about a cancellation that might have been under false pretenses of a TV personality up here. I'm still trying to find out more information on it, which is why I'm being a little bit cagey about it. But right now, it looks like the person got her life ruined, and it was an exchange totally stripped of context, which sucks. There's a difference between being wrong and being bad, right? Big difference. Again, you're wrong, and here's why. One thing, you're a garbage human. Well, the minute you start doing that, you lose the right to complain when people talk that way about you, right? Like, that's the fair benchmark. This is a comment I wanted to get to from Oron Darklord. He brought up that I was doing an Isagoria versus Parrhesia issue. What are those? There's a reason I avoided those words. Those are the two ancient Athenian, ancient Greek concept of free speech, right? The Isagoria approach is that everyone having equal freedom of speech and equal opportunity in the public square. And Oron summarized this as what a person may say must be left unrestricted, but how they say it can be moderated. Yes, that is where I'm at. That censor approaches, not ideas. Because all censoring an idea does is pushes it way back into the dark places where people can't fish the person out, right? If a person doesn't want to engage with, if they don't want to touch the poop that day, that's their right. And, but, you're saying, no. If somebody's, instigating a racist dog pile, that's about how they say it, right? Like, I don't think it's anybody's gonna be that thrown off. At least I'm not thrown off. One person makes one racist comment at me in a day, or sexist or homophobic or transphobic or whatever. But when I'm getting hundreds of friggin' messages that are all about the same thing, it's like, This is just a silencing tactic. It's just a silencing tactic. It's not about me. It's not about what I said. It's about this urge of the mob to destroy. And we can do something about it. We can. Because it's one thing, I'm in my 40s, shit relatively together. I took the volumetric shit compressor thought cabinet in Disco Elysium. I have my shit together, right? You do that to somebody, like, not even, a 16 or 17-year-old, even somebody in their 20s. You do not have your shit together in your 20s, right? And when it happens to people like that, it causes damage. We can do something about this, right? As Oron and as Oron said, the rules are based on behavior, not ideas, tested by making sure those rules are consistent and evenly apply. And yeah, I've been really consistent that even application of the rules is what is lacking. So Oron's spot on. spot on in terms of interpretation of what I am saying. Now he moves on to the Parrhesia approach. And at least it seems to exist in practice in online discourse. It's the right to simply unload on people. And he says, I think that it has popularity in part because it's easier to apply. Fair rules is a difficult concept to get right. And I actually had to stop myself there and reread that and realize he's right. Fair rules is a difficult concept to get right. I'm like, dear God, we are that far gone, aren't we? Yeah, okay. And it requires some level of good faith between interlocutors. That's why it's so hard on the internet. No rules is rather self-explanatory, but simple doesn't mean good. In practice, victory in the marketplace of ideas under this paradigm becomes less about the ideas themselves and utterly about personal qualities of the speaker. Yes, free speech becomes a test of mental endurance. And it's not even the person who can scream the loudest who wins. It's the person who can withstand the most screaming for the longest without quitting the public square at exhaustion, rage, or fear. That's true, but it's actually a combination of both. It's a combination of the person who can get attention by being a victim, sticking around, and then screaming. So it's the cycle of a person who is legitimately victimized, then uses that platform to go on and victimize others. It's, just this Ouroboros of torture. It's this Ouroboros of mental abuse. It's just the serpent eating its own tail. The abused becomes the abuser over and over and over and over and over again. And, he goes on to say, and I agree, he's doing a thought experiment here, and I agree with the way his logic is laid out. I sort of see the bones of a logically defensible idea in internet parrhesia. In the interest of gatekeeping certain types of bad actors, it's reasonable, sometimes even necessary, to expect those who want access to the public square to have the courage of their convictions and be willing to defend themselves and their ideas from open challenge. I agree. But a line needs to be recognized and evenly applied between challenge and abuse, or this actually tends to promote very bad ideas from damaged or shitty people. Few of the and this is the part where Dwarven Hobble said the one side, now Auron's saying, few of the Parrhesia absolutists actually manage to withstand their own crucible if their theory is put into practice against them. Those demanding the right to fling infinite invective have a lengthy track record of whining when they, or something important to them, ends up in the same crosshairs. Remember Ben Facts Don't Care About Your Feelings Shapiro getting his brain melted by Cardi B? Cardi B. But those who do make it through rarely make it through intact. Hell, look at Gina Carano going a little batty under the strain of being treated as fair game for the infinite online abuse over extended period. And I agree. That's my opinion of Gina Carano. A few people have asked that. I think that I have not seen her, she's mask skeptic, but I haven't seen her post anything abusive to anybody. I think she actually is cracking under the strain. And I'm really worried that people are creating a monster in that person because, her comment, she hasn't done anything in a while, but her comments did start becoming like borderline indefensible. Now, granted, the girl who played, Shuri in Black Panther made dubious comments regarding COVID, I believe, as well. And it kind of peaked and went away. For whatever reason, well, we know it. It's the, Gina Carano offended certain very loud mobs online. And they won't let her go. They won't let it stop. They will just keep dogging her. And that's not right. There has to be a half-life on outrage. They're just going to keep going until they get her on something, and that wears a person down. Do I, agree with her views? Of course not. Do I think they were so obscenely awful that it warrants cancellation? No, I don't. Now, part of that is because I think she's absolutely fantastic in The Mandalorian, and I can't think of an actress working now who could do that job as well as she does. It's an asshole to awesome ratio thing, right? Like, hey, Robert Downey Jr. was a train wreck drug addict, and people gave him a second chance. Just saying. What Oron says is, so either at the end of this, you're going to be getting ideas from people who've come unglued due to prolonged psychological torture, and ideas from people who are psychos, fanatics, or narcissists to begin with and thrive on hate and drama, and everyone else will have tapped out. Bingo. Internet parrhesia is almost like hazing, except that hazing has an end point. You make it through Hell Week and you're a full member or what have you, and people stop treating you that way. There's a place in the world and in public debate for baptisms by fire. They're sometimes beneficial, but the whole world can't be an endless baptism by fire. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. I think that's very well put. And, you know, it's like we understand what a balanced approach would look like. We seem to be further ahead than these internet companies who just do mass bannings based on group affiliation and ideas as opposed to individual violations of their rules, right? Like, if we can figure it out, why can't these people making this much more money? It's really strange. At least we know where we need to go, which, like I said, is a step ahead. Now, the Wellness Wednesday video, I don't have a ton of time with the Wellness Wednesday video, but I will say it looks like trauma is something we're going to have to do more on. Like I said, this has been really humbling. I'm starting to wonder if like booking one-on-one time for a reasonable fee with people isn't something worth doing. Like people could even donate sessions to pay for somebody else to get just a little bit of a check-in, not counseling, because that's not what I do. I'm not a trained professional that way, but just someone to talk to who will not reject them. It seems like it's necessary, and maybe we could even get a group of people who could do that. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. It's just the people, the stuff that comes out of people. People clearly need someone to talk to in a non-judgmental space. You know, people asked, one person asked, perspective on what conversations can look like when a traumatized person wants to reach out to the person who abused them in the interest of healing the relationship and moving past the difficulties, so on and so forth. And I read that and I'm just like, oh, sometimes that works. Sometimes that works. That works when trauma was made by mistake. Okay, that's someone was abusing drugs or alcohol. They've gotten clean. You can have a conversation with those people. But if a person is still actively abusive, you're not going to feel good. You're going to walk away with a fresh round of abuse. That can only work if both people are willing to do it. This is a sort of circumstance where it is case by case basis, and I cannot give general theories and practices on that one. It's just too situation specific. Ellie, I'm just going to say her name because she put some very personal stuff on. I'm not going to read it because writing it is one thing, but saying it, I'm afraid it may sound sensational. I want to jump to the end of her comment where she says, I don't know how I'll be able to be in another relationship despite me wanting to, because so much as touching someone gives me flashbacks. I'm so afraid of getting intimate with someone and, having flashbacks. I don't know how to heal. Even admitting it just made it worse. I can't exactly make myself care about school. I don't know. I guess the point is just trauma is hard to deal with as in a way of sticking in the mud. This is something I talked about last week, Ellie. Like this is rumination as opposed to healing. Now, part of the thing she said is she couldn't even admit something happened until last week. So it's still very new. It's still very raw. These things do take time. I will say that sometimes pushing yourself too hard, like if you can't make yourself care about school, don't care about school, girl. Like, who the fuck cares about school right now? You're in a much deeper battle. If you're in post-secondary, mental health leave of absences are a thing. I don't know if that's an option for you, but pushing too hard, trying to just push through can make it worse. You got to take time to heal. Sometimes the minute you just stop for a few days, sometimes even a week, that's enough, right? It's the process of stopping. As long as you just keep pushing, yeah, you're just going to get more and more and more worn down. So again, I can't speak to the specifics of the circumstance. There are often pressures to keep going. I was there, trust me. But if you don't care about school right now, it's totally healthy based on what you wrote. You don't care about school, don't care about school. What would have been winter break is coming up. Take that time and just fuck life in the face, man. Just give yourself time. Do not feel you want another relationship. That's great. Be ready for it. Like, take time for yourself right now. You were through a lengthy ordeal. You were through numerous lengthy ordeals. Forcing it won't heal, right? You break your leg, you need a cast. Emotions are the same way. You just keep trying to walk on that broken leg, you're just going to grind your bones into dust, right? Healing requires rest. Healing requires, stabilizing the wounded area. And, in these circumstances, I mean, the nice thing is that teletherapy, online therapy, all that stuff has become more commonplace, in part because of COVID, in part because there have been studies that saying it's like pretty much just as effective as in-person therapy. So that's an option. But even those services are overburdened right now. Sometimes all a person needs is some rest as the starting point. Like, this is a serious situation. It's going to take more than that, but don't push. Like, don't put yourself, fuck school right now. Like, fuck school right now. It is not your priority. If you don't care, you don't care. It'll always be there. You can always go back, and most schools will give you a deferment. I know in one case, a friend of mine went to a military college and they wouldn't give her a deferment because they didn't recognize her health condition, which was bullshit, but she transferred schools. But like I said, there are a lot more comments, but out of time, like I said, and that one was like, I wanted to just respond to that one because sometimes when things are that rough, somebody giving a shit, even over the internet, means something. I don't know how much. I don't know what it means, but sometimes it means something. And, obviously this format is working. We need to expand on this format. We need something that's more tailor-made for people. I'm not like some sort of peer-to-peer thing. Let's work on it. Let's workshop this, because this is clearly like YouTube is not, on its own the best platform for this, but it's a really good starting point just because it's easily shared. And again, when people are like, I showed this to my psychiatrist and he thought it was great, and I showed this to friends of mine because I think it explained it well, and I'm like, shit, man, I gotta up my game. Like, people are watching now. But that's good. It's good. I'm glad it is providing structure for people. It's really good. If an idea jumps out that you find useful in your own therapy, badass, man. That's great. I'll leave it there this week. Have a good weekend. It's friggin' cold here, so stay warm this weekend. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, unless you're in Australia because it's your summer there. Thanks for watching.